The UFC Fight Night Boston post-fight press conference has just wrapped up. It is early Monday morning here in Boston, but everyone's still buzzing over what they witnessed in the main event. Of course, Conor McGregor defeating Dennis Siver in the second round. It didn't take him 2 minutes, a little more, but in the end, he won the fight and jumped over the cage afterwards, confronted Jose Aldo, and now it is official. The most anticipated featherweight title fight of all time is going down later this year. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ariel Helwani in Boston. That is the man in the hat, Chuck Mindenhall. And Chuck, what a night in Boston. Everyone buzzing. Conor McGregor called his shot. He was a few minutes off, as I said, but still a very impressive performance. Once again, were you impressed by it?
Yeah, I was. I thought coming into this fight, it was because of all the promotion. You know, they're running this promotion all over the NFL, all over the main Fox, everything else. It seemed like it was sort of a recipe for expectations getting up here, and he wouldn't be able to deliver. But I thought he held up just fine. In fact, I thought he really showed what his sublime talent is, and which is just organizing himself in space and being able to pick his shots, just take apart Dennis Siver as the fight went on. It was almost like he starts to get into a rhythm. You see him sort of, I don't know if he's talking to Siver during this or if he's talking to himself. I almost feel like he's kind of talking to himself as he does this, but you see him just sort of setting up his shots, and it sort of becomes a thing of beauty to watch him in there. And yeah, it took him a little bit longer maybe to do it, but I kind of liked what he said in the press conference here, where he said, you know, he wanted some time in there. He wanted to log some minutes, and he was enjoying it. He was looking at the packed house. He was thinking of those things. I really believe him. I think he really is that methodical in his mind. He's very methodical how he fights. So I think he's just that organized in how he goes about it. I thought he looked great.
Afterwards, what a scene that was when he jumped over the cage and confronted Jose Aldo. It felt like something was about to happen. He says that he restrained himself because he didn't want to lose money, but you get the feeling that we're going to see that a million times leading up to the fight. That was promotional gold, right?
Of course. And going around the internet before this, of course, before his fight, there's Jose Aldo, you know, dressed as a king, and he's holding up a gesture picture, whatever that was, of McGregor. So it's already starting. And it is. It's got the big feel. That's all you really want in the fight game when you're covering, especially from our perspective and from fans. You know, just as these two guys who are going to come together. You have one guy who's been there the whole time. We don't know another featherweight king. Then you have a guy and he's been pretty much respected. You know, I would say pretty universal. I know some Chad Mendez, and there's been some run-ins, but pretty respected. And then you have this guy coming up, getting all this attention, maybe more attention than anybody should up until this point, you know, on merit and everything else. But here he is, getting ready to challenge him, and he's proven his case that he actually has the goods, the skills to stand with him. I mean, right now, it's one thing he did tonight was ratchet up the sort of, you know, what he might be able to bring in that fight. I think some people still thinking, well, Aldo's up here, he's still over here, he's mostly talk. I feel like he's right here now. You know, he's starting to come up, and what an intriguing fight to contemplate.
Are you as impressed as I am of the way Jose Aldo handled all of this? Just stood there smiling, you know, even the little shots here and there, but very much like a champion. Like his presence made this all feel bigger, in my opinion, but he kind of looked down on Conor in the right way and didn't get fired up, didn't bring himself down to his level, and I felt that he handled himself perfectly. What do you think?
I thought so too. That's what he has. You know, he has that sort of composure. In all situations, really, he's always been that sort of professional about his job. And it's funny because they came from similar circumstances. You know, Aldo coming up from not a lot of money. I don't think McGregor, you know, he had his problems as well. And yet how different they are when they get to this level. McGregor is now this bombastic sort of personality who's, you know, makes it very comical, even his mercenary pursuits, what he's going to do and all this, aligning with Dana White, you know, what do we sponsor by, Coke or Pepsi, you know, that sort of thing. I mean, it's hilarious to listen to him. But then you've got this calm, cool presence of a champion, a guy who's been there for this long, doesn't really need to engage in that sort of thing. He knows that his actions will stand up once he's in there. He's always been that way, and he's always backed it up. He's always backed up anything that he's, you know, he has had a few moments where he's sort of gotten a little out of hand with Mendez and things like that, but he always backs it up. And I think it's just goes into his confidence and his persona.
I was on that UFC Rising show and said something that got some people's panties in a bunch. I said that I believe Jose Aldo needs Conor McGregor as much, if not more, than Conor needs him, because Conor was going to go down this path and shoot for the king no matter who it was. But Jose Aldo has been missing this guy that's going to bring out the best in him and elevate him onto this stage. We never see him at these events. We never see him putting out things like this. He has shown us a new side of him, and he is getting more attention than any of his other title fights or defenses. Do you agree with me?
I completely agree.
I don't want you to say that because I'm standing here, but you get where I'm saying.
I completely agree with you 100%. And you could look at this any number of ways. We're watching Dennis Seaver walk out tonight in a main event in Boston, and you're like, if he's just one side of the equation, but why is he here? He's here because of Conor McGregor, and I'm like, a guy like Conor McGregor comes along, and he's gunning for somebody who's been sort of a middling, not a big, he's big for Brazil, and he's been big in certain diehard factions and stuff, but he's not like big in terms of, Brock Lesnar big. He's not even big, and like John Jones, what he was doing. He just hasn't been there, and I think that this is the one guy who comes along. Everybody knows Aldo's name. I don't know how many people, always buy his pay-per-views. So they know what he can do if you watch the sport. But the casual people, the ones we're always talking about, the coveted casual audience, aren't going to know him like we would know him. But suddenly you have a guy who's talking about him. He's talking about Aldo. He's disrespecting Aldo. Aldo's name is going to build through Conor McGregor. Of course he needs that guy. He needs that guy to 100% bring him up. And here we are. And this might not just be the biggest featherweight fight. I mean, this might be one of the bigger fights that we get this year. Sure. So, yeah, I mean, it's people are foolish if they don't see that.
Yeah, and let's be clear. I don't think Aldo needs to beat Conor McGregor to cement his legacy, but he needs him as his foil to take that next step, much like Chael Sonnen and Anderson Silva.
100%. And I would agree with that sort of analogy. And what's funny, I remember writing columns about this back in the day, like when those guys were first doing this, the rivalry was sort of forming after 117 and everything. Without one, the other just doesn't get to where they ended up. It's just as simple as that. And I think that it's just the perfect time. I mean, you've got Jose Aldo, who's been nothing but, like I was mentioning, he's nothing but the kingpin of this division for so long. You have a guy who's coming up who's the star of the UFC right now, really, and you're going to put those two guys together. They help each other reach that level. I mean, in the end, you hope that just like any great rivalry, in the end, 20 years from now, they can laugh about it, shake hands, and be like, "Wow, we did this together." You know what I mean?
McGregor show you anything new?
Not really. Not really. He was getting there was a couple I thought he was snapping off that jab pretty nice, but he's, like I said, he's been handling space so well. Like, that's one thing that I marvel at when I watch him, is just how he's able to slow it down, see what's developing in front of him, and react to it. And almost, it really looks like he's in a trance. Like, you see his eyes just sort of focus on not the guy so much as just the movement in general, and he just does that. I thought he did that again tonight. He was taken down a couple of times, but he bounced right back up. But honestly, he just looked like a better version of himself that we've seen before. So I just thought he sort of cemented that more so than anything new.
Before we go, let's quickly touch on the co-main event. Who do you think won?
Wow, that fight was so close, yeah. And so therefore it's hard for me to be like, well, it's a robbery or anything like that. But I had Cerrone winning 2-1. I believe I had, so I had Cerrone the first 2 rounds, and then I had Benson Henderson the third. I believe that's how I had it. But you think back on those rounds, and you're like, it really was just the volume of leg kicks. It was the kicks in general. Benson Henderson was throwing that you're like, maybe he's winning this round, maybe he's not, but there was more effective striking from Cerrone. Some of those strikes he was getting, he had a couple of takedowns that were key, one in the second round. It's just one of those fights. To me, it was like sort of a coin flip in the end, but I had no problem with it in the end. Like,
kind of wish there were 2 more, right? 2 more rounds.
That's what I was thinking at the end of it. I was like, if they had 2 more rounds, then you probably aren't left bereft. Like, I felt a little bereft with it. Like, what? I don't, nothing's resolved. So I would have liked to have seen it in a couple more rounds, sure.
Uriah Hall beats Ron Stallings. Norman Park loses to Gleison Tebow, but the SBG guys, Conor McGregor, Cathal Pendred, Paddy Holohan, all win. But Cathal Pendred, a very controversial win. Still, they go 3-0 officially here tonight. Any other story we must touch on before we say goodbye?
No, I think we've hit everything.
We covered it?
I think so. I mean, Yeah, I mean, to me, it was a pretty fun card. It was a little reminiscent of the Cormier Jones one because it felt like there was the Irish fans that were in Boston. They kind of kept it lively the whole time, but there was it took over at some point this level of anticipation. So you were like the first fight out, T-Bow's fight with Park. It just seemed like it wasn't really happening. I mean, people were just sort of distracted, wondering what's going on. So. It was just a fun night in terms of we had a big main event again, or a guy that people wanted to see, and that sort of sublime draw just makes it, it makes the night that much bigger. So it was a lot of fun.
Well, Boston officially in the books. Next stop for the UFC, Sweden. MMAfighting.com will be there for that one. Alexander Gustafsson versus Rumble Johnson live on Big Fox in a soccer stadium. 30,000 people expected for that one. That should be a lot of fun. Before we get there, though, MMA Hour back, not on Monday, on Tuesday this week because of this Sunday night affair, but it will be the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, same place, MMAfighting.com. I think we have a few things to talk about, so I'm looking forward to that one. For now, we say goodbye. Chuck, Ariel, thank you so much for watching our coverage all week long here in Boston. We'll see you on Tuesday.